Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a banger of an episode for you today. We're going to be talking about the stabilizing sales systems can actually help you to get significantly higher ROAS or return on marketing spend from things like Facebook advertisement, YouTube ads, or cold email. It's going to be based on something that we're going to do in the back end of the business, unrelated to spending more money. Now, if you guys are here for the first time on this channel, all we talk about are the tactical lessons that we're learning as we scale our business up from $2 million a year all the way up to $10 million a year. And we talk about scaling businesses to 100K months, whether it's your first 100K month or you're adding multiple six figures onto the back end. What we're going to talk about in these episodes is what worked for us, what we're actively doing, and what's working for our Media Firestorm clients. And this is for you if you're trying to scale to 100K a month or you're looking to add on that next 100K month afterwards. Now, quick disclosure here, we do not make any income claims on this channel. Everything we talk about here is for education and entertainment purposes. According to data I've researched online, it looks like less than 3% of businesses in the US ever even get to 5 to 92 employees or around the $1 million a year level. So it's really highly unlikely that you're ever going to get to 100K a month. And with that taken on board, let's dive into today's episode. Now, what we're going to be covering today on the episode is just a quick overview, stabilizing sales systems. And so we're going to talk about what is a stabilizing sales system versus a leverage sales system. We talk about the three big levers that really matter for creating stable growth in your company and just three tactics that you can implement in the next 90 days to 3 to 5X your ROAS. So really being able to be putting $1 in and getting $3 out, or putting $1 in and getting $5 out. So first up, what is the difference between a stabilizing sales system and a leverage sales system? So a leverage sales system would be something like paid advertisement, Facebook ads, where you're putting dollars in and getting a leveraged outcome back. And 99% of the time, if you're looking at running Facebook ads, or if you're already running Facebook ads, you know that you're really optimizing for that purchase in the first 7 days. Very, very rarely are you ever going to be looking at how do we get someone to buy 30 days, 90 days, 180 days from now. So leverage sales systems, they're typically scalable. They're typically paid advertising, and you're reaching a lot of cold people. So examples can be Facebook, YouTube ads, Google AdWords, cold email, cold calling, something that you're putting dollars in to get money out. And so what a stabilizing sales system is something that you can do that's either free or underpriced, is typically going to bring you warmer prospects or is going to warm up cold prospects for you. And some examples of some stabilizing sales systems would be organic content, podcast guesting, email marketing to like an opted-in broadcast list. And so I want to talk to you about a very simple concept. If you are looking at a business and you've got business number one over here that sells a one-time thing, it is a $5,000 service, right? And then you've got business number two over here that sells a $3,000 a month ongoing service. Which of the two businesses is more valuable? Well, everybody would tell you, well, it's the business that has the recurring revenue that's more valuable. Why? Because a customer continues to come back time and time again. Now, we know this concept when it comes to pricing and product, but when we think about lead generation, we seem to think that it's completely different. Now, how most of you guys are treating your marketing systems and your marketing funnels, especially with things like Facebook advertising, is that you're treating it like a one and done. So you're going out and you're spending significant amounts of money to try and acquire a client up front in this first 7 days. You're going from nothing to getting them to be a buyer as quickly as you can. Now that can work, but the reality is of 1,000 people that you end up speaking to, you're really only going to get 1 to 3% of those people who are actually going to take any significant action in the business. And so what we want to think about is how can we actually create a system where when we're generating leads, all of those leads aren't going to waste. Think of it like, how can we create recurring leads as well as recurring revenue in the business? And so when we're looking at a stabilizing sales system, my definition for a stabilizing sales system is something that can create recurring lead opportunities and really sales systems that create a stronger likelihood of a transaction. And so what we're looking to do here is we're looking to continuously market to leads every day for free. We're looking to warm up those leads every single day so that they become ready to buy for free. And what we're looking to do is to increase back-end conversion, sometimes not just over a small time horizon, but a significantly longer time horizon. We're talking about conversions in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days. I've had customers where I've generated generated a lead, and 400 days later, after I've been marketing to them every single day, they finally transacted and become a customer. And so what we're going to talk about today is how can you build strong, stabilizing sales systems in your business so that in the back end, after a lead comes into your ecosystem that you may have paid for, we can actually create this recurring opportunity where you can continue to market to that lead in an easy way and at the same time be increasing your back-end profitability. Because as we all know with paid advertising, the person that can spend the most money to acquire the customer wins. And so this is something we talk about a lot when it comes to scaling, is making sure you've got this stable back-end system to continue selling customers. Now, when you're looking at levers for growth, what we want to look at is what is the biggest lever that we can pull that is going to give us the most stable growth so that we can spend a lot more money on marketing even if we do a bad job. We're going to talk about a couple of tactics here. So first, I just want to break down a traditional call funnel. Now, you know, in a traditional call funnel, you've got a marketing side and you've got a sales side. In the marketing side, you're really just trying to get people to do two things. You're trying to get people to click to the calendar in the first place or to click to the page in the first place. And then you're trying to get them on the calendar to book a call. And then when they're actually over here in the sales side, you're looking to get them to show up for the call. And then once they show up, you want to try and get them to buy. Now, if you look at any marketing ecosystem, typically, if you can book more calls, you can make more sales. And so one of the three biggest levers that I want to talk about here for creating stable growth is the three metrics and the three levers that you should be looking at. Number one is how many leads do you have, aka email list size. The bigger the list, the more leverage you've got for creating stable growth. Number two, how many clicks can you generate daily? You know, how often are you actually emailing that list? And number three, how can you get more calls that can book through the calendar and how optimized your calendar is? Now, just to give you guys some industry benchmarks and metrics here, you know, if you've got a business that's under 100K a month, you're typically going to have a list of anywhere from maybe 2,000 to 10,000 people on that list, maybe more depending on your scenario and situation. If you're getting click-throughs on email, industry average is about 0.3% to 1%. And if you've got a typical direct to booking calendar, you're usually going to get somewhere in the region of 10 to 15% throughput. And so I want you to remember these numbers. We're going to bring them back later as we talk through some of the ways that we can create a bit more growth here. So what tactics can we talk about? Well, first of all, if we're looking to add some more ROAS onto our ad spend, we want to be thinking in longer time horizons, not shorter time horizons. So I'll give you a really good example here. Imagine, for example, you are spending about $25,000 a month on Facebook ads. You're getting $20 leads, $250 book calls. And so in 90 days and 75K worth of ad spend, you're going to end up with 3,750 leads, 300 people booked a call. If you had a 70% show rate, about 200 showed up live, and then you're getting about 40 deals that are coming from that. And so depending on your price point, let's just say you've got a $5,000 product, pretty average that you're going to see that in the coaching industry. You're looking about 200K cash collected coming in this example. And so that's not a bad return. You're talking somewhere in the region of 2.5 to 3X ROAS just there. And that's a pretty standard Facebook ad spend that you're going to see for most businesses that are playing this game in the $1 to $2 million a year level. Now, you may be spending more money than this, you may be spending less money, and as we all know, as you scale ad spend, it actually gets less efficient. You're going to have lower profitability, it's going to get more expensive. And so a couple of things that we want to do is we want to add in some back-end conversion mechanisms that are basically going to help you to make more money off this. So think of it this way. When you put out your traditional funnel, let's say you're driving people to a video sales letter, right? There's really just one mechanism that you're trying to get all the customers to buy through. And most of you guys don't have any other mechanisms. And if you think about the different types of people and the way that people like to consume content, not everybody consumes content in the same way. You've got some people that are visual people, you've got some people that are auditory people, and you've got some people that are kinesthetic people. They like to get their hands in there and get involved. And so a lot of the time, when you just have one type of conversion mechanism, you're typically missing out on a lot of potential extra sales by not having different types of conversion mechanisms in the back end. And so one of the things that we talk about for all of our clients here when they're running, other types of marketing and they're trying to get, more marketing on board, is making sure that you have multiple different ways in which you can convert customers. For example, you could have a video sales letter, maybe you get about 3% of average people that are going to book from that. If you have a website or a homepage, it's a great place to put something like that so you can get people coming in and converting. You can also do a once a month live webinar. Webinars are absolutely crushing it right now. And so going live and getting that face-to-face interaction and telling people a little bit more information about what it is that you do and the way your product works can be a really effective, different conversion mechanism where they can come in, ask some questions, and really just experience it live. You can also, and this is something we do for a lot of clients, if you don't have a high volume of calls, right? Let's say you're doing your front-end Facebook ad marketing and you really just need more calls on the calendar. Something that we do a lot of is something we call the minimum viable calendar. And a minimum viable calendar is, instead of putting people through a lot of friction, we really just get them to book directly into the sales call, and we put all of the education and consumption on the back end. And the reason we do this is that typically with a minimum viable calendar, you're really going to see 10, 15, sometimes 20% throughput of somebody clicking that link to go to the calendar to actually booking in for a call. So if you've got a lot of warming up that's happening with some of these stabilizing sales systems, you can afford to have less friction on the front end, and ultimately you can get significantly more calls coming in. I'll touch on that in a little bit more in a second. On top of that, you've also got to think through, well, could I have some written sales assets like a Google Doc sales page? We used a Google Doc sales page in our business for the longest time, and it worked great. We had some people coming in who would read 25 pages of this document, and they just had so much context about who we are, what we did, that coming into the sales call, they were absolutely slam dunk closes. But not everybody always wanted to consume it. And then another thing that we have also seen as a conversion mechanism that's worked well is audio webinars, is essentially having, a 3 or a 4-part audio series that's just similar to what you would go through in a webinar process, educating people about what it is that you do, and then driving them to book a call in a more direct manner like we talked about with the minimum viable calendar. So one of the things that we talk about in terms of maximizing your ROAS is just making sure that you're trying to sell people in different ways. If you think about all of these different assets that we're talking about, most of these are one-time inputs, with the exception of a webinar, which you're going to do maybe once a month, and it's going to take you, a couple hours prep and maybe an hour to do a webinar. Everything else, you build it once and then you can continue to use it afterwards. And so multiple back-end selling mechanisms is going to help you to sell more of the customers, just in slightly different ways. But the biggest question you've got is, well, how do I tell them about these conversion mechanisms? And this is probably one of the biggest things that we help clients to implement, and that's to email their list daily. Now, for a lot of people, when you start to talk about the concept of emailing people daily, they absolutely shit their pants. And I kid you not, people are like, oh, Jamie, how could you come along and just email everybody every single day? Well, first of all, we are a business. We're here to sell. We need to tell people, hey, this is what it is that we do. We advertise. If you had a store and your store was only open 1 day a week, and you were saying to yourself and your friends, man, my store's not making enough sales. I wonder how I can increase my profitability. Every moron with a brain cell would tell you, hey, why don't you just open up your store more days instead of being only open for 1 day, right? But when we think about online business, we seem to think it's different. Emailing your list is not different than that. And so what's really important to understand with emailing your list is that people can unsubscribe. If they don't want to hear from you, they will just unsubscribe, and that's totally fine. And you want to make decisions about emailing your list based on sales velocity, not on how you feel about the list or how many people are unsubscribing. And so typically you'll always find this, when you email more frequently, you make more sales, and we are a sales-focused organization. So a couple of things to look at here. Email list averages, how much you make. This is a really good indicator and a good rule of thumb for you to figure out if you're doing a good job with email right now. If you're making less than $1 per subscriber per month, so you have a 10,000 person email list and you're making $2,000 a month from the list, terrible. You're doing a really bad job. If you're making $1 per sub per month, that's pretty bad too, right? If you sell a high ticket business and you've got a 5K product and you've got 10,000 people on your list and you're only selling 2 people a month from that whole list, you're doing a pretty bad job. There's a lot more bang for your buck to be gained from that. Now, if you're getting $3 per subscriber per month, let's say you've got 10,000 people on the list and you're making $30,000 a month, that's average, right? That's pretty good. You're not doing a terrible job there. And then if you're earning anywhere from $5 to $10 per subscriber per month, that's in the good to the exceptional range. So take a look at those numbers, look at your own list, look at how much money you're making, and ask yourself the question, am I actually earning what my potential is? And by the way, one of the best things you can do to increase your earning potential here is simply to increase the volume of emails that you send per month. So remember, we talked a little bit earlier about those average numbers, right? The average click-through rate of an email is anywhere from 0.3% to 1%. Now, inside of our Media Firestorm program, one of the things that we show people, which is massively important when it comes to emailing your list more frequently, is not only what to write in the emails themselves with lots of templates, examples, and guidance and coaching, but on top of that, how to make sure that when you start sending more emails, you don't end up in spam purgatory and have your whole email list being destroyed because of some kind of update that's been rolled out by Google. And so if you're listening to this and you actually would like to get some help installing some of these systems, you can go down to the description and click the information about our Media Firestorm program. We help our clients to get booked on podcasts, as many podcasts as they want to, on high quality shows with great traffic opportunities. We help clients send daily emails. And ultimately, we help clients install some of our cash generating playbooks that will help them to fix systems like this so they can increase their marketing potential, make more money, make more profit, and ultimately have a stable business that's going to help them to grow and scale. And so if you're interested in getting some help with that, you can look down into the description. But back to those email examples, what we're talking about here is let's just say, for example, you've got 3750 emails on the list. These are new emails that you added. And so in the example above, where we were talking about running ads, $75,000 worth of ads, that's how many new leads we would have generated, 3,750. Well, if you have a 0.5% click-through rate, you email those 3,750 people, you're going to get about 18 clicks on that email. So if you email them, you say, hey, we should probably help you. Here's how we do it. Here's some information, right? 18 people are going to click that email. Or if you get a 1% click-through rate, double that, right? 37 people. Now, if you send one email per week, then you're only going to get the best part of like 100 clicks. But if you email them every single day and you change up the way that you email them so they don't get bored or overwhelmed or any of those things, you go from like 100 clicks to 1,000 clicks. That's significantly more. You're talking about 10 times the marketing throughput just from sending more emails. And just to be clear, I've been emailing my list every single day for the past 6 years. And yes, you get people that unsubscribe, but we make significantly more money from our email list because of the fact that we email them every day talking about what it is that we do. The people that want to hear from you want to open your emails. That's why they opt in the first place. So if you've got 28 emails a month, that is every single day in a month sending an email, you're talking about 18 clicks per email. That's 500 clicks, or if you're getting a 1% click-through rate, that's 1,000 clicks. Now, bear in mind, that is just on the new leads that have come in from the ads. If you've already got 10 or 20 or 30,000 people on your email list, we're going to be talking significantly more clicks. For example, if you've got 10,000 people on your email list, a 1% click-through rate is 100 clicks a day. And so if we're talking about 28 emails a month, you're talking an extra 2,800 clicks. Now, what's really important to understand here is that if we're sending someone to a direct mechanism to convert, like a minimum viable calendar that gets a 10 or a 15% throughput of people landing on the calendar and booking for a sales call, 1,000 clicks is worth 100 sales calls. 2,800 clicks or 3,000 clicks is worth 300 sales calls. And so if you have 10,000 people on an email list and you're not emailing them every day to book a sales call, you could be missing out on 200 to 300 sales calls per month if you've got a really high click-through rate. Even if you've got a worse click-through rate, 0.5%, we're still talking 150, plus calls that you could be booking every single month. And so really important to understand here is, bottom line is that if you just are sending out frequent emails in the right manner, this is a giant mechanism for you making significantly more profit and more return on ad spend. And what's really cool about this is that this is not something that tends to be a linear experience. And what I mean by that is that usually how a lot of people equate things is, I'm going to send 5 emails and I'm going to expect I'm going to make XYZ sales. What's great about email marketing is that some of these leads will buy in the first 7 days. Some of them will buy in 30 days. Some of them will buy in 90 days or 6 months from now. And some of them will not buy for a whole year. But when you send an email every day, that 15 or 20 minutes that it takes you to write it is something that's going to go out to the entire list. And there are many of you that have been running Facebook ads for a significant enough time and just have not been contacting your leads and been reaching out to them to get help. Case in point, there's a client that we worked with. His name's Connor. He sells a viral solution. He helps people go viral on TikTok and Shorts. He sells a $97 product. They spend about $350,000 a month on ads. They've got about a 2X ROAS. So any given month, they could be making somewhere from 600 to 700 grand a month. Now, when he came to work with us, he'd amassed a list of 150,000 people, and he very rarely ever emailed them. When we looked at how much revenue he was making from his emails, he was making about $15,000 a month. So that's about 10 cents per subscriber. Absolutely dog shit. It was terrible. And I told him that, and I said, hey, dude, we need to fix email. So there was two things that we did. One, we helped connect him with one of our email partners that helped him fix his deliverability because his email was in the toilet and he needed to pay to get that fixed. I think he paid about 10 grand to get the email deliverability fixed. And then once his deliverability was fixed, we sent out a 7-day email campaign to those 150,000 people on his email list that hadn't really been hearing from him because his deliverability was down the toilet. In 7 days, he was able to add an extra $200,000 cash collected. That was not with sales calls. He was just driving people to a checkout page. And so when we went through this process with Connor and we go through these different things that we can add in, the different mechanisms, emailing every single day, and ultimately doing more opportunities to convert those customers, he's probably going to be able to double his business just by offering different conversion assets and emailing them every single day. And so really important is making sure that as you're going through understanding how to stabilize ad spend and how to make it more profitable is just to be emailing the leads that you've already acquired and giving them different things and different ways to buy. And so for Connor, we're now adding back-end call processes to upsell more expensive products. We've got a daily email process, and we're also going to do some podcast content to help him warm up and upsell the leads. Now, that goes into point number 3 of these stabilizing sales systems, is that a lot of people, when we think about podcast content or YouTube content or any kind of content you put out there, a lot of people consider that content is a front-end traffic solution. I go and speak on a podcast, and my goal is to go get leads from that podcast. Now, that can happen. You can go on a podcast and you can often get new leads. But a lot of people misunderstand the biggest benefit of podcasting. Now, when you go and be a podcast guest, not only are you being introduced as an expert, but you're being edified by the person that's hosting that podcast, them basically saying to their audience and to other people watching, this person is legitimate and you should listen to what they have to say. And so one of the really important things to understand is that when it comes to leveraging podcast content, it goes way beyond just getting exposure. You can use podcast content to get outside authority. When people are doing their pre-call research, they're looking to try and figure out, should I pay this person money? Seeing you on other websites, when they Google you, other things coming up, is going to edify and actually make them realize, well, this person is legitimate. Similarly, when you go get on these podcasts, you are going to get leads. You are going to get traffic that's going to come through. But thirdly, and most importantly, we want to be remarketing to leads with this content. And these are some of the really important things that we actually throw in our cash generating playbooks, the back-end systems that we use to help customers make more money inside of their business. Now, 3 main ways that we implement this is through something we call the Ramsey effect, something we call the Firehose ad strategy, and then what we call breakout podcast episodes. So first of all, the Ramsey effect. If you look at Dave Ramsey, he's been recording live content for freaking 30 plus years. The dude is a genius at it. And so what he'll do is he'll go in and he'll record a long form podcast episode, and then he'll take that long form podcast episode that he did on a radio show, and he's going to go and put that whole interview onto his YouTube channel. So he gets all the exposure to the first amount of people that were new to him, and then he also gets all of his existing people to go through that long form episode. Now, on top of that, they also have the Ramsey Show highlights, which is where they take from that 2-hour episode 6 to 8 minute clips from that interview, and they break them up on their own YouTube channel. Now, I can tell you for a fact, I have never watched the Dave Ramsey Show in long form. I don't think I've ever seen even 10 minutes of a 2-hour Dave Ramsey episode. But I can tell you I've watched hundreds of the 6-minute clips. And so having that same content in different ways just increases consumption. Now, what's really important to understand here, and the reason behind creating these long-form podcast episodes and this content in the first place, is that if you can get your prospects in your sales process to be consuming these long-form and short-form content pieces, it's actually going to increase the level of trust they're going to have with you in the buying spectrum. So we always talk about this. When you have customers coming into your sales process, there is a spectrum of trust. In the beginning, they're coming in incredibly skeptical. As they get a little bit further into the process, they kind of are warming up to the idea. A little bit further along into the process, after they've maybe read some more stuff or done some research, they're beginning to get convinced. And ultimately, at the end of a sales process, they will get to the point where they're completely convicted in saying, this is exactly what I need to do. Now, all sales happen after the convicted level. Sales do not happen unless somebody gets to the point of conviction. And so what's really interesting about a sales process is that after somebody comes through a sales process, the longer they are out of that sales process, the more that interest level drops. So you can get somebody right up to just before the point of conviction on a sales call, and then if nothing happens for the next week, they may drop back down to that lower interest level, basically leaving you to the point where you've got to warm that lead all up and over again. And so the purpose of remarketing with this podcast content is that every single stage with your lead is to be raising that interest level. The Ramsey effect is all about taking that long form content and giving it to people who are in your pipeline, those people that have become leads, have looked at your Facebook content, and warming them up so that they want to interact with your conversion assets. Some of the other strategies that we have, specifically the Firehose ad strategy and the Breakout podcast episodes, this is more engineered when people are at the bottom of the funnel. And so if you think about it right now, imagine that you've got somebody that's come through your VSL and they've now booked in for a sales call. Now, what we want to do at this point is we want to make sure that they are consuming as much content as possible before the sales call actually happens. And this is where the Firehose ad strategy comes in. You're going to get all of these podcast episodes that you've done, both the long form and the short form, 15 to 30 plus pieces of content where you're talking about different things about you, your business, and your sales process. And you're going to push that out to people that are in that stage of the buying cycle for 7 days. And you're going to do a volume and frequency based Facebook ad retargeting strategy. And the idea behind this is really simple. When somebody goes onto one of your ads and then books through and becomes a customer, now at this point, we want to just be hammering them with as much content as possible. And if you get them to basically drink from a fire hose, consuming tons and tons of your podcast content, by the time that they get into the sales conversation, they're going to have more curiosity, they're going to have a higher level of certainty, and they're also going to be way more likely to pay in full or to buy in a shorter time horizon inside of that process. Similarly, our Breakout podcast episode, Cash Generating Playbook Strategy, is similar to that. You're going to actually go out and do podcast episodes, and you're going to clip parts of those episodes as trust building assets. And so a lot of the time what we're going to do is on our confirmation page, once somebody is booked in for a sales call, we're actually going to have specific 2 to 3 minute audio clips and podcast clips where you've been speaking on somebody else's podcast and answering a key question that customers have, an objection, a question, something that they're maybe not certain about, a case study or testimonial, to basically get people to the stage where they're going to be more likely to buy. And you can also send out these podcast episodes in pre-emails, being sent out to somebody before they come onto the sales call itself. And so these are just some of the stabilizing sales systems that we talk about. You know how this goes by now. We really just want to talk to you from the front lines of what's working inside of the business and what we're actively doing. And if you can add in these 3 stabilizing sales systems, adding in different conversion assets, adding in a daily email cadence, and then really making sure that you're using podcast content in different ways to warm people up, this is going to give you significantly better opportunities to increase your ROAS and what you're returning on your ad spend for your marketing efforts. If you like this video, please do me a favor and hit like and maybe subscribe to the channel. This is a new thing that we're doing. I hope you enjoy this content, and we're looking forward to seeing you on the next one.